Welcome. Thank you for joining us today for the first session of Demystifying Dementia and Brain Healthy Living. I'm glad you could join us. My name is Brenda Price. I'm the Associate State Director at AARP Michigan. And joining us today for this wonderful presentation are Annie Mae Holt. Annie Mae is a volunteer with AARP Michigan. Roberta Sexton, she's also a volunteer. And Lisa Denton Cooper, she is our advocacy manager for the state of Michigan. So for today's session, what we want you to do is listen, take your own personal notes if you choose, but don't worry about a lot of note taking because this information will be available to you. But we want you to ask questions. Questions help not only you get answers, but other listeners that may have similar questions get answers too. To write a question, all you have to do is put it in your comment section on the bottom of your screen, and we will receive it and we will ask and address the question during our Q&A period. There will be a PowerPoint slide presentation that will provide lots of information and a resource guide that can be available to you once you complete this. You can find it at aarp.org/mi-DEMENTIA. And this information and location will come up again in the presentation. So if you missed it this round, just be prepared to get it later in the presentation. So again, we want you to post questions in the comment section because that will help us and other listeners to better understand the presentation and get the information that you need. Our next speaker coming up is going to be Annie Mae Holt. Annie Mae?
Oh, thank you so very much, Brenda. And thank you, AARP, Lisa, Brenda, Karina, and Roberta for this opportunity to serve. About 20 years ago, my family discovered that one of my favorite aunts was showing unusual signs of forgetfulness. We all forget stuff, but with her being a very organized college professor and the person who generally organized the family reunions, her forgetfulness was somewhat perplexing for us. Over a year or two, the forgetful episodes became increasingly advanced, so much so that her husband had her diagnosed by a physician. Her sisters and brothers were not convinced of the diagnosis and went about practicing holistic medicine against the research and prescribed diagnoses of the medical profession. My aunts and uncles loved their sister and were hoping that the person they once knew would just come back. As caregivers, we desperately try to provide loving care. But in retrospect, I see we were not caring for the person living with Alzheimer's dementia. We were caring for a person who once was. Most recently, I have witnessed the stress of two very close families with whom I am friends. They too seem to have a family member who is attempting to live with Alzheimer's dementia. They are members with the Grandma Number One Improvement Association. Also recognizing this situation, the president of Grandma asked me to reach out to get professionals to come and speak with our membership about Alzheimer's dementia. He knows me as a contact with AARP, so he assumed I could make the contact almost immediately. Because Lisa Cooper had invited a number of us to attend the Senior Michiganian Day in Lansing, I was able to make the contact immediately with the Alzheimer's Association field. The presenter came, made a phenomenal educational presentation. Since COVID-19, our association has asked that I contact Lisa again to explore a part 2 presentation for the continued education about Alzheimer's dementia. We are looking forward to Lisa making this very presentation to roughly 5 subdivisions in our area. If I've learned anything about my aunts and uncles as we attempted to care for my aunt, their sister, I believe it is how valuable the education of family and friends benefits the care of the Alzheimer dementia person who is trying to live with that disease. Lisa invited several AARP volunteers to attend the Michigan Dementia Coalition Conference. It was during that conference we met with Brian LeBlanc, co-founder of We Are Dementia Strong. Brian has been living with dementia for several years. Through his Facebook page, he educates and attempts to help folks better understand the plight of living with Alzheimer's dementia. Through his life experiences, he offers suggestions of what we caregivers can do to help our loved ones who are living with Alzheimer's dementia. Thanks for your attention. And I believe, Brenda, I hand it over to Roberta.
Yes.
All right. Thank you again for your attention.
Thank you, Annie. I agree with everything Annie just said. However, my own experience is just a little bit different. Several years ago, one of my longest and dearest friends began to act differently. We had been close friends since we were children, and I couldn't understand what was happening with her. So I tried to ignore it. Soon that strategy wasn't working, and her family was also experiencing the same stresses and actions Annie just described. Time went on, and we all tried to cope the best we could. Her doctors didn't seem to help, at least to support her family. She has since passed on, and as an AARP volunteer, I met Lisa. I was so thankful when Lisa took up this cause in AARP and began working on the Alzheimer's and Dementia Coalition and how to live your best life. I've learned so much. Thank you, Lisa. It is now my great pleasure to introduce our speaker today, Lisa Denton Cooper. Lisa is an attorney and serves as manager of advocacy for AARP in Michigan. In that role, she provides strategic leadership and direction for AARP state and federal legislative advocacy work in Michigan. She is also co-chair of the statewide Mission Dementia Coalition, an interdisciplinary group of over 120 individuals from dementia-related fields and backgrounds representing more than 65 organizations. Lisa was the primary author of the Michigan Dementia Coalition's 2019 to 2022 roadmap for creating a dementia-capable Michigan. Please welcome our speaker today, Lisa Denton Cooper.
Thank you. Thank you, Roberta. And I want to thank all of you at home for joining us today to talk about dementia and brain health and some terrific resources related to dementia and brain health that everyone should know about. And I'm actually going to click ahead to the very end of our program and tell you what I hope to leave you with. First of all, I want to leave you with a feeling of hope. And second, I want to leave you with a sense of what you can do to become more empowered on behalf of yourself and your family and friends. AARP, as you probably know, is an organization that advocates for public policy on behalf of people age 50 and over. And AARP is involved in this subject because it's on the minds and impacting the lives of more and more of our members in Michigan and across the country. AARP's purpose is to empower people to choose how they live as they age. Now, no one chooses to have dementia, but we can help people choose to live healthier lives. And we can help empower families with knowledge and resources so they can live better and have a better quality of life than so often happens for people living with dementia now. And that's why AARP is committed to bringing information and resources to more families. But you heard a little bit about the story of Annie Mae's family and the story from Roberta. So let me tell you how this became a personal issue for me. This is my dad, Jack. Now, by the time he reached his 60s, he had become someone other people really didn't want to be around. He'd grown increasingly self-centered and increasingly obsessed with sex, and he didn't seem to care or notice that he made other people uncomfortable. So one by one, members of my family banned him from coming to their homes based on inappropriate things he said or inappropriate advances he made toward their guests. And, I limited my interactions with him too, because I didn't want to be around that kind of behavior either. But then in his 70s, he began to have problems with balance and walking and incontinence and swallowing. Still, it wasn't until the last year and a half of his life that I came to understand that he had developed, and at that point was in the end stages of, a type of dementia that was characterized not by memory loss, but by socially inappropriate behaviors, including hypersexual behaviors. And that's when I learned that Alzheimer's disease, which is characterized by memory loss, is just one type of dementia. Here I was working in the aging field, and I didn't recognize what was going on in my own family as dementia. Now, my experience with my dad made me realize how unprepared my family was for the unhealthy changes in his brain that occurred as he aged, and how unprepared other families are, and our communities are really, and our nation. As a result of my family being unprepared, our family relationships were damaged. Opportunities for joy and togetherness were lost, and estrangement was a result. So let me share with you a few things that you may or may not already know about dementia. First of all, what is it? Well, dementia is not a single disease. It's a general term to describe the loss of cognitive and behavioral function in an adult that's severe enough to interfere with that person's daily life and activities. And what cognitive function means is thinking skills, memory, problem solving skills, that sort of thing. Alzheimer's disease is one type of dementia, and it's the most common one. It's the one we tend to hear about the most. Alzheimer's disease accounts for 60 to 80% of the cases diagnosed. And you know what the hallmark symptom of Alzheimer's disease is, right? Memory loss. One of the most common signs of Alzheimer's disease, especially in the early stage, is forgetting recently learned information. A person living with Alzheimer's may put things in unusual places. They may lose things and be unable to retrace their steps to find them again. You may also find that they ask the same question over and over. Other types of dementia, see on the screen here, include vascular dementia, dementia with Lewy bodies, frontotemporal dementia, Huntington's disease, Parkinson's disease dementia, and the type of dementia portrayed in that Will Smith movie, Concussion, CTE, or chronic traumatic encephalopathy. So CTE is a type of dementia that we tend to see in people who were athletes or maybe military veterans, people who sustained traumatic injury to their brains. People with Lewy bodies, with dementia with Lewy bodies, as Roberta mentioned that her friend had lived with, have some of the symptoms common in Alzheimer's, but they're more likely to have initial or early symptoms of sleep disturbances, visual hallucinations, and visuospatial impairment. Lewy body disease is the type of dementia that Robin Williams had. And since his death in 2014, his wife has written very poignantly about his experience with it, if that's something that you'd be interested in checking out sometime. Now, frontotemporal dementia is the most common dementia in people younger than 60 years old. Typical early symptoms of frontotemporal dementia include marked changes in personality and behavior, or difficulty with producing or comprehending language. And now vascular dementia is another big and common type. Vascular dementia is a decline in thinking skills caused by conditions that block or reduce blood flow to various regions of the brain, depriving them of oxygen and nutrients. In vascular dementia, changes in thinking skills sometimes occur suddenly after a stroke, which blocks major blood vessels in the brain. But thinking difficulties may also begin as mild changes that gradually worsen as a result of multiple minor strokes or another condition that affects blood vessels that then leads to widespread damage. But two important things that you should know about dementia are that, one, it's not a normal part of aging. Dementia is caused by diseases or damage to the brain. Also, dementia is not just about memory loss. The specific mental and physical symptoms that someone with dementia may experience depend on the parts of the brain that are damaged and the disease that's causing the dementia. So based on what part or parts of the brain experience the deterioration, a person's behavioral changes will be very different. Not everyone with dementia has a particular problem with memory loss. And in any case, dementia is about more than just memory loss. Each of these different types of dementia that I mentioned have different symptoms and cause different problems. As I mentioned, some people have trouble with language. They may have trouble remembering words and forming the right ones in their head and getting them to travel to their mouth. I don't know if you've ever seen that in somebody. Or they may have trouble with concentration or problem solving. Many people with dementia, especially in later stages, have trouble with balance and gait and experience falls. Falls are actually the leading cause of hospitalization in people living with dementia. And for some people, their behaviors become socially inappropriate, like their social filter in their brain isn't working anymore. So my dad didn't lose his memory, but his behaviors and physical abilities deteriorated very dramatically. Now, as I said, dementia is not a normal part of aging. The vast majority of older adults do not have dementia, and most will never develop it. However, the older you get, the likelihood that you will end up with dementia does increase. Even though the majority of older adults don't develop dementia, of those people who do have dementia, about 80% of them are people age 75 or older. So, what can you do if you suspect that you or a loved one has some sort of dementia? First, talk to your doctor. You can ask about a simple test that you or your loved one can take to help identify presence of cognitive impairment. Then, if need be, you can meet with a neurologist or or neurologist for diagnostic testing to assess your thinking, strength, coordination, reflexes, and more, a whole battery of tests. Now, people sometimes will ask, why get a diagnosis when there's no cure? You might think, I'd just rather not know. Or maybe I don't want to lose my freedom or my dignity if other people find out I have this going on in my brain. Well, for one thing, new treatments are being developed as we speak. And there may be treatments or clinical research trials that you or your family members might want to be involved with. For example, speech and cognitive therapy have been shown to help people who learn about their dementia early on. And I've personally met people who've benefited greatly from that in life-changing ways. And right here at home in Michigan, there's a lot of exciting research being conducted by researchers at the University of Michigan and Michigan State University and Wayne State University and the Michigan Alzheimer's Disease Research Center in Ann Arbor, which is one of 32 dementia research centers at major medical institutions across the United States, funded by National Institutes on Aging. But whether a cure is on the horizon or not, knowledge is power. Early diagnosis allows patients and their families to have time to adjust and make plans for how their lives are going to be different. Time to help preserve or repair family relationships. Time to make informed decisions about things like housing, transportation, and finances. And just time to recalibrate and reimagine their lives moving forward, because they'll be different. They don't have to be bad. They will be different. Now, one of the items that I want to tell you about is the AARP Michigan Dementia Resource Guide for Families. This guide includes information about how to connect with organizations specific to different types of dementia. So all those different types of dementia I mentioned earlier, there are organizations that you can go to online and you can connect with people and information that's specific to that kind of dementia. This guide also includes information about programs and services that you and your family may find helpful. Things like training programs for family caregivers for people living with dementia that are offered in communities all across the state for free, typically for free. And in this guide, you'll see information about where to go and find out about current research. Additionally, if you are interested in diving a little deeper, there's a book I recommend entitled Dementia Reimagined by Tia Powell, a doctor. And I think in her book, she makes this really important observation regarding how we as a culture tend to think of dementia as a death sentence, or maybe as something to be ashamed of, rather than as what it is, a chronic disease that a person is likely to live with for many years. And when we do that, when we just think about how we're going to die and not how we're going to live, we can miss out on opportunities for people to continue to live well with joy and purpose, or at least to live better than so many people with dementia do now. And so this brings me to the other topic of our program today, how regardless of our age, there are steps that we can take to reduce the chance of age-related diseases and optimize our chance of maintaining our cognitive health. So I never really paid attention to brain health before I became a caregiver for my dad. I don't know how many of you have thought about brain health, maybe even before today. But after I was a caregiver for my dad, I realized there were two questions that became front of mind for me. First, now that I have a family member with dementia, what can I do to help that person still have a good quality of life? And second, is there anything that I can do to keep this from happening to my brain, right? It's in my family. Is there anything I can do? Now, I need to share a disclaimer that our program today is intended for informational purposes and it does not constitute medical advice or diagnosis or treatment. I'm not a doctor and I can't provide you with specific advice or recommendations. But hopefully, the information that we cover today, which comes from the Global Council on Brain Health, will help encourage and empower you to make informed decisions on how to lead a more healthy, brain healthy lifestyle. So, what's the gist of the message? Well, I think it's very good news. And it's stuff that you may or may not have heard about. The good news is that regardless of age, our brain is constantly changing and we can make new nerve cells. And the best part of this all is that we can do a lot to change, to take charge of our brain health and improve our quality of life. Experts say that only about 30% of physical aging can be traced to our genes, and the rest is up to us. So, according to current brain research vetted by AARP's Global Council on Brain Health, there are 5 pillars of a brain healthy lifestyle: move, discover, nourish, relax, and connect. There is a lot that we can talk about each of these. There are entire books written about each one of these. But today, I just want to touch on each of these briefly and to stress the point that these pillars are important for all of us, regardless of our age and regardless of whether you have dementia or not. How you tend to your pillars may look different depending on your age and your current health, and whether you currently have dementia or another chronic condition. But there are still benefits to your body and your brain to pay attention to these things. So let's discuss the importance of this first pillar, making sure you keep moving. The importance of exercise. Beyond the obvious physical impact, looking buff, exercise has many other benefits. It's good for your brain and your heart and reduces stress. Research suggests that being physically active helps repair and protect chemicals in the brain, increase circulation, reduce anxiety, improve your sleep, which we'll talk more about in just a moment, and reduce the risk of diabetes, health or heart disease, depression, and stroke. And this doesn't mean you have to become a marathon runner. You don't have to join a health club. You just need to move more. And the benefits of exercise are important to older adults, whether you have dementia or not. My coworkers and I, especially now that we're teleworking, have been trying to commit to getting up from our desk and moving more, walking around throughout the day. And maintaining physical activity while taking precautions for safety is important for people living with dementia too. They tend to have lower levels of physical activity and motor function compared to older people without dementia. As I mentioned, dementia, particularly in later stages, can lead to generalized weakness, gait changes, and balance impairments. And that physical reduced activity in people with dementia leads to a decrease in muscle mass and strength, and then that causes a further cycle downward that increases their weakness and the risk for falls. The second pillar of brain health is continuing to discover and learn new things. Studies show that challenging your brain in new ways throughout life or exercising your brain may strengthen your brain. Our brain is stimulated and grows when we learn new things or pursue new interests. So it's good for your brain to stay curious. Give yourself a good mental workout by doing something that challenges your thinking, offers you enjoyment, and encourages you to grapple with new and complex ideas. Maybe learn a new game or try out a new hobby. The third pillar of brain health is good nutrition. What you eat has a big impact on your brain. Although no one specific diet has been shown to prove or been proven to maintain or improve brain health, studies have shown that certain eating plans do help with cognition. These eating plans include the Mediterranean diet, the DASH diet, which stands for Dietary Approaches to Stop Hypertension, and the MIND diet, MIND, which is a hybrid of those two. MIND stands for Mediterranean Dash Intervention for Neurodegenerative Delay. Right? Try to say that 3 times in a row. In general, though, these plans call for eating less meats, less sweets, and consuming more fish, nuts, beans, whole grains, leafy green vegetables, and healthy fats, such as olive oil. There, as I mentioned before about books on every pillar, there are books specifically about the MIND diet and these other eating plans that I just mentioned. Now, earlier this year, the Global Council on Brain Health published a new report called The Brain-Heart Connection, which lists recommendations to manage cardiovascular risk to brain health. And the short of it is, while more research is needed, it's such a huge issue, a reasonable rule of thumb is what's good for your heart is good for the brain. What's good for your heart is good for the brain. The fourth pillar of brain health is connecting or staying socially engaged. Studies suggest that people who have good social networks live longer and are physically and mentally healthier than people who are socially isolated. Connecting with other people is stimulating and can add meaning and purpose to our lives. In fact, experts say social connectedness is a key predictor of health and independence in later years. And again, this is really important, whether a person has dementia or not. It's healthy to keep engaging with friends and family and community and to seek out people who share your interests. Volunteering is a great way for people to stay socially engaged and to know that you are living with meaning and purpose. And for many people, pets can bring great joy and companionship to our day-to-day lives. Now, the connect pillar in particular is one that tends to get neglected in the lives of people living with dementia. So one entry in our AARP Michigan Dementia Resource Guide that I want to call attention to is the entry for the Dementia Action Alliance, which is a nationwide organization of people living with different kinds of dementia and their care partners who are committed to living well with dementia. They offer a dementia mentor program and other opportunities for people to connect as peers. And that's something that you can get involved with now because they meet virtually. They've been meeting virtually even since before COVID, and they use Zoom to do that. Last but not least, the fifth pillar of brain health is getting good sleep and keeping your stress levels down, which allows your brain to relax and recharge. So if you've already fallen asleep during this presentation, good for you. Getting enough sleep is essential, both REM sleep when you dream and NREM, or non-REM sleep, the state of deep sleep when you're not dreaming. Good sleep techniques are also referred to as good sleep hygiene, and they include getting 7 to 9 hours of sleep in a 24-hour period, maintaining a regular sleep schedule, sleeping in a cooler room. I don't know if you've thought about the temperature of the room that you sleep in, but some sleep scientists suggest that 65 degrees is the ideal. Adjusting your intake of caffeine to be earlier in the day can help a lot, and reducing exposure to light prior to sleep. Now, stress reduction activities might include things like meditation or controlled breathing, even something as simple as sitting quietly and counting your breaths, taking slow, deep breaths in and out, in and out, and smiling, laughing, and a good sense of humor also help to keep stress levels down. So it turns out participating in fun activities with people who make you laugh or even watching funny shows is good for you. Science has told us, science says it's good for you. There's a book that I want to recommend, I highly recommend, and it's titled Why We Sleep by Matthew Walker, PhD. You can read it, and it's also available on audiobook, and it's terrific. Getting a full night's sleep has so many benefits, and yet we as adults in modern America are horrible at it. As a society, I think we've done ourselves some real damage by undervaluing sleep. We have this magic elixir, sleeping, this incredible tool available to us as humans to help balance and maintain both our physical and our mental health. And yet we too often don't use it. In fact, we tend to glorify people being able to get by with only a few hours sleep per night. If you've done that, you hear that, I bet you have in your own life. We glorify people for not getting enough sleep, even though the science shows us that people are more productive and tend to live longer, healthier lives when adults get 8 hours of sleep a night. Do you get 8 hours of sleep per night? If you do only one thing differently as a result of today's program, I hope that you will look at your sleep habits and see what kinds of things you can do that you can adjust to help you begin getting 7 to 9 hours of sleep per night. So to put it all together, even though science doesn't have all the answers yet, we know there are at least these steps that we can take with regard to the health of our brains. The overall message is to stay mentally, socially, and physically active with special attention to a healthy diet and getting a good quality sleep and reducing your stress. Regardless of your age, there are things you can do. You don't have to feel powerless. Just start with small steps and try to do something every day. And there are also opportunities that we can seek out if we or a loved one does end up with dementia. Opportunities to continue to find purpose and meaning and enjoy togetherness. For more information, I invite you to visit the website that's been rolling across the bottom of the screen during our presentation, aarp.org/MI-dementia. And that has a link to these resources here on the screen right now, as well as this PowerPoint. And there's a lot more there that you can get, and I think that you'll find helpful. And finally, if you're intrigued and you want to dig a little bit more into the science of cellular regeneration and these 5 pillars, the basis. Here's another book, The Telomere Effect. So one of the authors of this book, Elizabeth Blackburn, received the Nobel Prize in Physiology or Medicine in 2009 for her work discovering the role of telomeres in our genetic makeup in the aging process. And the other author of this book is a health psychologist who studies stress in aging and obesity. So it's worth a read or a listen, I think, if that's a topic that you would like to learn more about. So thank you for participating with us today. What did you think? I hope I was able to deliver on my 2 promises to you, to provide you with at least a glimmer of hope and to offer you some basic information to help empower you with regard to your and your loved ones' brain health for now and the future. And now I'm going to turn it back to Brenda to help us with questions or comments or thoughts that you at home have for us. So,
Thank you,
Brenda?
Lisa. Yes, thank you. That was a wonderful presentation, and we do have a few questions. The first one is someone came in later in the program, and they wanted to know if they can pick this up later. Yes, all you have to do is go back to your Facebook page at the beginning of the video and start it, and you can see it in its entirety, now or later. Mark has a question. He wants to know, is it possible to know how many people in Michigan have dementia? Do you know that, Lisa?
Yeah, so that is actually an interesting and a little bit more complicated question than it may seem on the surface. But it's estimated that we've got nearly 200,000 people in Michigan who have Alzheimer's disease, the most common type of dementia. So we figure about 200,000 people with Alzheimer's. And that number is projected at this point to grow. But interestingly about this number, we know that the total number of Michigan residents with dementia is likely a fair amount higher than that 200,000 figure, because this estimate is based on people who are age 65 and over. So it doesn't include people who are younger who have dementia. And it also doesn't include some of these other types of dementias. It's just the stats are on Alzheimer's. And we know that there are a number of people who are living with dementia who are undiagnosed.
Oh, great. Is it possible to get a copy of the slides from this presentation?
Yes. So, the website that we've had showing up, that aarp.org/mi-dementia. And on that website, you can find a copy of the slides, and you can find a copy of the Dementia Resource Guide for Families that I talked about that you can download right from there. And there are also other links to things like all those reports from the Global Council on Brain Health that you might find interesting or helpful.
Well, this is a great question. Someone wants to know if there are support groups that are operating during the pandemic.
Yes. Hey, that is such a timely question. We know, I just talked about how the importance of continuing to connect it's so important to our brain health and our overall health. And so many of the things that people have relied on up to now have been support groups and things that happen in person. But in Michigan, and I'm sure around the country, there has been a migration of a lot of these programs to now happen online. Over Zoom is one of the, I think, the most common way. So actually there's in Michigan, Roberta had mentioned our Michigan Dementia Coalition, and the website for that organization is midementiacoalition.org. And if you go to that website, we keep a list of the types of resources that are available for people specifically right now due to COVID. And so we see the Alzheimer's Association and a number of these other groups have put on programs. They've got support groups that are meeting virtually. So you can just go to that site, and that's really, really helpful. I think that you'll be able to see that, the resource guide that we put together, it's got a lot of links. But if you go to that website, we keep it up as the Michigan Coalition with regard to opportunities that are new and changing. Particularly, we've got a whole page about how things are different now due to the COVID pandemic.
Oh, great, great. One more question. A person wants to know if the information and the resources that you have brought to our attention can be mailed to them because their printer does not work at home.
Yes. You know what? We want to get it in your hands. So what you can do is on the AARP Michigan Facebook page that you're on watching this right now, if you go up and you click on the button to message AARP Michigan, you can send a message to us and just note that what you would like is us to mail you a copy of the resource guide. And you can put your address in there so we can mail it to you. Our folks will gather that information. Don't put it in the comments because we don't want the whole world to see your home address. But message AARP Michigan directly, privately, and we can put one in the mail to you, definitely.
Great. Thank you for answering those questions. At this time, we are going to move towards wrapping this up. I'd like to hear from our volunteers, Annie Mae and Roberta, to share with us their final thoughts or advice for anyone who has a loved one that is in this situation and your family is providing support. Annie Mae, you want to go first?
Oh, sure. And thank you so much, Brenda, Lisa, and Roberta again. Now, what I did was, because I didn't know if we were going to have enough time for this recap, I put into the chat box, Lisa, the 3 points I hold on to from your presentation. And I've heard this presentation, And each time I hear it, I tone in on another fact that you present. And the one that we have to really resonate is that Alzheimer's dementia is not normal for the older adult. Contrary to what people think, because again, we all forget and they say, oh, you must be suffering Alzheimer's dementia. So that's number one. Number two, education is the key to add to the quality of life of families and friends who are living with Alzheimer's and dementia. And there's one fact that, and I know you sent us a book about sleep deprivation. There's one fact is that sleep deprivation is not normal. Now, I just saw my uncle, who is the brother of the aunt I referenced earlier. He calls me all times a day. There's a culture thing there that you shouldn't be napping in the middle of the day. So I'm glad that you brought that fact up as well, that we don't think as well as we should if we are sleep deprived. So those are my 3 points. And again, that this presentation is available, and all folks need to do is, of course, contact you. Thank you again, Lisa and all.
Yeah, thank you, Annie Mae, for the recap. Always a teacher, always a teacher.
That's what I remember.
Right.
Write it down. Yeah.
Thank you, Annie Mae.
Yeah.
Thank you, Lisa. And if I could make one big recommendation to everybody listening today, and that is to download this program and go back over it, because every time I hear Lisa or I read or I look at the material, I glean something new in a deeper way. There's a lot of material here, a lot of resources here, so it takes more than one listening. So like Annie Mae, I would say, look at it again. See what you can glean that's new. And I go back to the thought of being able to live your best life, not only for yourself, but for the people you love. And for me, I have to guard myself. I'm one of those people that does not get enough sleep. And Lisa actually sent me that wonderful book. And I naturally, all my life, I've slept short hours, not as long. My husband sleeps almost twice as long in a night as I do. So the 5 pillars is filled with information, just absolutely filled. Take advantage of it and learn. And live your best life.
Yeah. So, and you know what, Roberta, you mentioned about the sleep book, and again, it is so important, and Annie Mae, you reference it too with the cultural people. I know we used to talk about, people say things like, "Oh, I've got so much to do, I don't have time to sleep," or "Yeah, I'll sleep when I'm dead," right? But I mean, what we see is that you'll be dead probably sooner, right? If you don't take care of yourself, if you don't sleep. And this is another thing where we look to the science on it, and you may be up longer with more hours of the day to spend, but the science actually shows that if you got more sleep, you would be more productive with those hours. So we shouldn't be shorting ourselves at any age.
Great. In closing, I want to thank all of you for presenting today. It was great information. I'm sure our audience appreciated. Audience, if you have any further comments, you can please post them in the comment section. We'd like to hear feedback from you on what you thought of the presentation. We appreciate having you, and thank you very much. You can revisit this again over and over again to make sure that you get the information, and please share it with friends. Again, thank you for participating in one of our AARP Michigan online virtual program offerings. Please come to our Facebook page often to get scheduled events and upcoming notices for our programs, which are now running almost every day of the week on our Facebook Live page. Just check us out. Thank you very much. Good day.